Okay.
But
So if you have that, then you'll know when it goes live, right?
I'll I hope so. Live it says, "Hello, dear Alex.
Hello, how are you?
Great, and it's with great expectations of very necessary insights that I myself joined this conversation today about the work, not so much the life and biography of Jacques Lacan. Jacques Marie Émile Lacan, as his name is in French, born on April 13th, 1901, and passed on September 9th, 1981. 80 years on Earth. Interesting segments that he spent on this planet, experiencing as a young teenager World War I, experiencing World War II. Two, if you ask me, and I think you will agree, misnomers for European, Eurocentric inability.
It's the European Civil War.
It's European. Thank you very much. That's where I was going with this.
Mm,
Misnomers, the
mhm.
European tendency to universalize their nombralism. And that is something that we're dealing with to this day, that I think most of the world formerly colonized by Europeans has not been able to shake off. It takes a long journey through one's mind and one's indoctrination to shake off the master signifiers foisted on us in our school system. And I think this is part of the conversation today, and how it,
And that's one of the reasons that I ended up with Lacan,
oh,
because I really realized that what I was calling the political
mm,
was really psychological, right?
mm,
It was really in the psyche, yeah. And so, um, yeah, so that's really what led me to Lacan. That
mm.
that prescience, yeah, and
So,
having and also finding a framework
mhm,
in which I could explore that, and that was rich enough to handle the kind of explorations I wanted to do.
mm. The kind of explorations I wanted to do were of which nature?
Um, well, I mean, the things that we see in Fanon, okay? Why do, why is it that we are in a society and the ideas of success are basically mimesis? They're basically copying,
Mm,
right? The
mm,
ideas of what is thought, what is medicine,
mhm.
are all copying. That why can't people see and figure out for themselves
Yes.
that especially in things like medicine, that if you take your medicines from your own soils and your own lands and you build out from that, that is in itself autonomy.
Mhm.
Okay, but no, that cannot be developed, because if it is not legible to the European center, then it is not valid. Okay, it
Validity.
is not
Mhm.
proper medicine,
Mhm.
right? So I thought I look, because I'm a herbalist, so I took that as a metaphor for what I was going to call autonomy, and I wanted to understand how that happened. What happened, because there's a point at which you can just say that people are stupid or something like that. I didn't think that that was sufficient an explanation. I thought that that was actually a point of foreclosure, right?
Mm, mhm.
So I don't actually need to look at what's going on here. I could just say that people are stupid, right? So I wanted to find out how these things happen, because they are exactly what is in identity, because they point at a sense of identity that requires inscription,
Yes.
yeah, and so on. So I wanted a psychological framework in which I could explore that. I found I didn't I found Freud interesting, but I couldn't do what I wanted with it. It did, yeah. And then I also found I tried Jung, But no, then I looked at Medard Boss, and who is taking kind of Heidegger's phenomenology to psychology. And whilst he's got the Zolikon's seminars and so on, which are incredibly wonder brilliant, right?
Mm-hmm.
I really found that some of this was too individual for me,
Mm-hmm.
right? It didn't preserve the sense. I couldn't manage the kind of relationality that I required for politics within that frame. And so eventually,
Yeah.
I did a seminar. I was part of running a seminar on I made a contribution to a seminar. Let's put it that way,
Mm-hmm.
on Frida Kahlo
Mm-hmm.
in Germany,
Mm-hmm.
and there I was introduced to Lacan,
Mm.
and from them I couldn't shake Lacan.
Do you remember by chance how Carlo and Lacan were intertwined in that context? It sounds
But
extremely interesting.
no, no, because the person one of the person who was leading the seminar was using Jacques Lacan's work, okay, or framework to explore Carlo.
Mm.
Yeah.
As interesting and fascinating as it sounds, if you haven't done the work, you can't see what they saw.
Uh,
You can't just project it and say, "Oh, look, what do I know about Carlo? What do I know about Lacan? What will?" You have to do the job to explore the experience of Frida Kahlo in order to see what that interrogation of Carlo's life through Lacan's lenses might have yielded.
well, I think that's the reality about any historical work. I mean, it's
Mhm.
any historical work is essentially hermeneutic. I mean, even when you want to make it, even when you want to make it objective
Mhm.
or to measure the facts, yeah,
Mhm.
there's a point at which it ends up being quite hermeneutic because you got to now interpret those facts,
Mhm. Mhm.
okay,
Yeah.
and so on. So I think that's structurally in any historical that's part of the structure of any historical work.
Yes. Yes.
So that I think what the person was doing was looking at the nature of Carlo's journey, and they produced a pamphlet actually,
Mhm.
which I found really yeah, which was interesting. This was the document that they
Hold
produced.
on. Hold on. It's blurry. It says the three Fridas. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and you can get that from here.
It is Andreas Rieger. Rieger at Kanzlei. Oh, that's a lawyer. -Rieger.com.
Yeah,
Rieger at Kanzlei-Rieger.com. All right.
yeah,
Andreas Rieger seems to be a lawyer interested in the three Fridas.
yeah.
Mm.
And so it was his explanation, his exploration that led me to Lacan. And so
Absolutely
that
fascinating.
I have to be
I hate when this happens to
eternally
me.
grateful.
I
Yeah,
hate when this happens to me. When my mind suddenly logs something I've observed as interesting, relevant for further exploration. And just seeing the title, The Three Fridas, I see that my mind has made a mark. This is might be important because I'm wondering, only three? Frida's only a trinity? Could be more to her than just,
yeah,
but but
yeah. But I mean, that's what he chose, and
that's exactly that's what he
and his
saw.
and his exploration was fruitful enough or pregnant enough
Hmm.
for me to be convinced that there was something here with Lacan.
That's very interesting. So you encounter or you feel a pull into Lacan's work interestingly, through sort of deconstruction, a Lacanian deconstruction of Frida Kahlo through a German lawyer's perspective. And
Yeah.
it's very interesting because I understand that today we'll be looking at three main facets of Lacan's instruments and paradigm, which is his distinction of three categories that are so fundamental to his work that I think we're not doing a disservice to our audience by looking at those with some prioritization, which is
The
the
three registers, right? As he
three
calls them.
registers. And these are the imaginary, the symbolic, and the real. And when I read the paper you wrote about sort of a Lacanian, where you gave, oh, that's now I'm connecting some dots, where you gave Lenin, where you gave Donald Trump and McCarthy a Lacanian scan.
Mhm.
That is the paper that is currently available on Dystopia Unmasked, which I strongly recommend people go and read. In that treatise, where you look at these three profiles, what you're doing is basically looking at the subject, the individual, in his moment, in his symbolic context, in their respective symbolic contexts. And in order to sort of have a better access to what it means to observe a subject within their symbolic context, perhaps it's not too bad to visit these three registers that are core pillars of Lacanian, uh, the Lacanian paradigm. I know that some people run away when they hear the word paradigm. I used to. Um, but I've sort of familiarized myself with it. And by that, I mean a framework through which a coherent narrative can be made about something one wishes to explain.
Mhm.
A coherent narrative, uh, presumably free of falsehoods, inaccuracies, and incongruences. A paradigm is a, yep, please.
The, the, the first thing I would say is that what Lacan gives us is a structural manner of looking at the world so that you can arrive at what is possible and what is impossible. Okay. Um, and that you can understand why we require fantasy, what
Mm.
role it plays. Okay. Um, it will also show you why people lie. Okay.
Mm. Mm.
Because you always have these things about, okay, when the in moral philosophy of, if the lie is the lie always bad, right? And then they come to the point of the white lie, where, um and is it worse to lie or to actually harm the person,
Mm.
right? Or is it better to lie to save a life, right?
Mm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
you end up with the whole conundrums of the idea of the lesser evil and so on, right? These
Yes.
the
Yes.
conundrums of moral philosophy. They are not new. And Lacan gives us a structural framework in which we can explore the psychological dimensions or the psychic dimensions of that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What happens in the psyche and how the psyche is actually structured. Okay.
Yes.
Um, Now, because my interest is in politics and geopolitics, I extend Lacan and I look at how that structures a polity. right? Or a political entity. Hmm. Please.
I'm noticing that we are already smack dab in the middle of the subject, and I realized initially I sort of wanted to touch a little bit on not so much his qualifications. This is not a careerist perspective we're taking here, but just sort of a mapping of the ingredients that we know of that led to this instrumental uh, structural paradigm that he shares. So
Yeah.
perhaps before we start, making ourselves comfortable in the
Yes.
usability and applicability of Lacan, both for the analysis of a character such as Frida or Trump or McCarthy or Lenin or whoever, before we, as well as
Well, I was
Lacan.
actually, what's really interesting here is I went there because I wanted to do exactly the same thing.
Okay, thank
So
you.
if you notice, I go to structure,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the
Mm-hmm.
next thing I wanted to go to was Sessio,
Okay.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
if it's okay, I would
Please,
prefer to do that.
please,
But
please.
if I haven't fulfilled what you wanted, then please, take control
Mm-hmm.
and put it back. Okay. So I in a reminder, so that I'm saying that we're looking at I look at the psychic structure of a polity.
Mm.
And so what I was really saying about Lenin, McCarthy, and Trump is that you can't look at them as an individual against the world.
Mm-hmm.
You have to look at them as part of a structuring of a polity,
Mm.
right? And what position do they play? Why they are needed, right? What are their impossibilities? What are their possibilities, right? What role are they playing, right? Because when I'm saying why are they needed, what role do they play? And in each case, I say that they are a suitor. They're like a stitching
Mm-hmm.
or a
Mm-hmm.
plaster or a papering over something,
Mm.
right? A wound or a void that society is facing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and so I take it away from a a moralizing of the politics, which can, I think, blind you to the dynamics of what is going on. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so that's the role I take, and this Lacan came to this kind of structural approach through the works of somebody called a Swiss linguist called Saussure, right? Who who Saussure basically described language as a set of signifiers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so words, concepts, or even like sentence. We have phrases that we will use,
Mm-hmm.
right? Some phrases are actually not the complete sentences, but we'll use them to denote a peculiar meaning.
Mm-hmm.
And so Saussure said that we have languages is a set of signifiers. So this one relates to that, but it relates to that. So in describing a single word, we must use other words to describe it,
Yes.
right? And that gives you its what I would call its semantic field,
Mm-hmm.
which I use sometimes. Okay, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
using Saussure's language. I'm giving it in a way that I think that we'll get. Okay, so that
Mm.
each word has a meaning field, a semantic field,
Mm.
and so um, those words that we have that are related to they are in the network of that word. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
you can understand that word by its network nature to the others.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and but language is used for by us to describe our world.
Yes.
And when we're talking about describing our world, we're not only talking about the physical world, we're talking about also our feelings, right? The feelings also my feelings, the feelings that I perceive that you may have, right? which actually I can't really know, right? Yeah, and so on. One second. So then the so what we have is that we are moving our way through language using these signifiers, and then there is what they signify, and what they signify, Saussure calls the signified.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but when Saussure is talking about the signified, he's not talking about my cup of tea, but my idea of the cup of tea. Okay, and your idea of a cup of tea may be quite different to mine, but there's enough of what coalesces around this for us to share the concept or the idea of a cup of tea. Okay, so the signified is not this, but that thing in here, right? So if you bring to mind a cup of tea, that's the signified. Okay, so Lacan comes in contact with this, I think, in the 1950s.
Mm.
Okay, uh, I might be wrong, but real Lacanians will correct me. I'm
Mm.
sure. Um, but what happens is that so then this gives him a real breakthrough to explore how language affects us, because psychoanalysis is conducted through language, right? And
Mm-hmm.
remember that psychoanalysts in the beginning were they were doctors.
Mm.
Okay, um, they were first doctors. They were trained as doctors, and then they became interested in the mind, and then right. So they would have precluded. They had the tools to preclude just physiological things, right? So they're going, okay, this is definitely the mind. Now we're going to deal with this. Okay. So 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 um so Lacan then takes Saussure and brings him into his Freudian frame, and he begins to look at what Freud talks about, not in the story nature of Freud, but as a structural system. So, like Freud would talk about castration, and for Lacan, castration is an operation, right? It's almost like a metaphor of an operation. So anything that is does fulfills that role is the act of castration. He's not talking about cutting off your balls, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which also, in a sense, Freud was doing, but he's at the very beginning, and um, sometimes it's difficult when you're pioneering something
Mm-hmm.
to to see some of the trappings of your method.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and Freud was aware of that. That's why his method changed. Right, in the beginning he would talk about the unconscious. Later on, he would not really talk about the unconscious. He'd
Yes.
more talk about, except as maybe an adjective in an adjectival way. He would talk about, so he'd use it to not as a noun, right? He moves on to talking about the id, right?
Mm-hmm.
The ego and the superego. And you know, you speak German, so you know that when what we talk about ego, Freud was talking about the I,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So there are things which are sometimes lost in translation. In this case, there's something which is added in translation
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
Freudian thought, right?
Mm-hmm.
By
Mm-hmm.
us creating this thing of the ego, right?
Yes. Yes.
Freud is talking about the I,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? So
Absolutely.
yeah, sorry, I'm going to step back. I mean, is
No,
that
no,
clear?
no.
I hope
But
that was bit was clear.
there's so much to pick up on. I could pick up on the last point you made, or on some previous points. The last point you made is what gets lost or added in translation. And I connect this particular notion, which I believe most of us, if not all of us, will have experienced in their lives, telling someone something in plain language and receiving the feedback that clearly indicates um, unsuccessful intelligibility. So I tell you something, and there's something we call a misunderstanding. Um, I tell you something, and there's something we call a no comprende. I don't get it. What are you saying? So there are so many variations of lost in translation or added in translation. And that is something that belongs to linguistic, or maybe I don't want to use the word linguistic because that sounds too heavy. It's something lost in communication. I don't remember who said it. I think maybe a sociologist famously said that um, under comprehension is quite improbable. Comprehension is quite improbable. I'm thinking it was Niklas Luhmann, but I'm not sure. I'd have to look for it.
Right.
Pardon me?
I in this matter I go to
Got him. I've noted it
Gadamer,
here.
who I consider the master of these matters, or my master in these matters. Right?
You know, when you spoke early on, you mentioned Jung, then Freud, then Bosch, then Zollikan and Heidegger, and I was thinking, why did he leave out Gadamer in that list?
Yeah, because I was talking about something very specific.
Okay.
So yeah, so I'm not going to think. I mean, also because I know that sometimes people might want to get things. Heidegger has his Zolikon seminars,
Mm-hmm.
right, which
Mm-hmm.
is kind of edited by Medad Boss.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um,
Mm-hmm.
if if you want to start with Heidegger, if anybody wants to start reading Heidegger, I would say an introduction. His introduction to metaphysics is, I consider, one of the best ways of entering into Heidegger's kind of method.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's don't read Heidegger as a method, right?
Yes.
Um, and yeah, so rather than yeah. Anyway, sorry.
No, no, nothing to be sorry about. Rather, what I'm trying to do is every point that you make, that to tie it back to um, the three registers that Lacan
Okay.
uh, has, which is the imaginary, the symbolic, and the real. And we will try and all, so I will try because I'm learning from
Mhm.
you, through you, um, of the utility of Lacan for my personal interest, which is geopolitics, from the relevance or utility of Lacan, and I don't like the word utility much, but it does the job
Mhm.
here, of Lacan for me search. Because something, when I was younger, in the academic context, I went to a seminar once and there was a man sitting there inconspicuously, and he was listening to all these professors speaking. And in the end, he said something that I've never forgotten. It's over 20 years ago. He said, I came here to listen to research findings. And I have to tell you, gentlemen, that professors, etc., that I heard more from a group of heptagenarians at the end of a me search journey. And some of you to this day confuse your me search with your research. That was his comment, and he left the place. And that play on words has stuck with me. And I realized that you might be interested in global domestic politics. You might be interested in understanding the imperial impasse in which the US finds itself. You might be interested in understanding the mass category violence and the refusal by the powers that be to call it genocide in Palestine. You might be interested in all of these things, but there is a perspective on these matters that leads you back to something about yourself, why you are particularly interested in these problematiques. It may have to do with something you are projecting of yourself onto reality, or something that the symbolic order is projecting onto you that for some reason you either cope or cannot cope with. And Lacan helps with that.
Yeah, because well, okay, so we were looking at how at that structural um, connection of language, right? So
Hmm.
Lacan Sorry.
No.
So Lacan takes that and he talks about our symbolic order,
Mm-hmm.
right? He talks about how we are embedded in a language which has its signifiers, right? It has law. So some of those signifiers, they opinion and discourse about law. They opinion and discourse about identity, right? Kinship. Okay. So Lacan talks about law, culture, right? I add identity, right? Um, and those are not fixed; they drift as time goes on, right? And that happened in Lacan's life. And yeah, so what we have, so this he calls a symbolic order. And what is really interesting about that is that when you came into the world as a baby, you were in the field of the symbolic, so you were in the field of language and culture and law, etc. Right? But you couldn't really partake. And there's a point at which you are able to partake in language, but you have to partake by taking something in which is outside of you. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So you're in it, but it's outside of you. So in a sense, it performs an act of castration in that metaphorical sense.
Mm.
I say it colonizes you. So language colonizes you. You're
Mm.
using words which are not your own,
Mm-hmm.
concepts that are not your own, desires that are not your own. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, and those all come from what Lacan would call the symbolic order.
Mm.
Okay. But then there is the part of your experience, right? Part of you as being a human being, which of your experience, which you cannot symbolize,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because there are always gaps in a symbolic order. It has words for this and none for that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Some things are thinkable and some things are not, right? Time is seen like this, but not like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so at that, um, at that point, is you come into what Lacan calls the real, that what cannot be symbolized. Okay. But Lacan is using things in different ways. Yeah. Um, um, yeah. Okay. Sorry. Counterintuitive is asking, this is Lacan's structure of the political psyche. What is it wishing to achieve? Okay. Because counterintuitive Lacan continues to appear in my work frequently. And, and so often I am correcting misconceptions or I'm feeling that I'm not really understood at times with certain types of things. And so what I decided to do was to give an explanation of what Lacan brings and why I use him so much,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what it gives. And basically, what I'm saying is that I began to realize that what I thought was the political was actually the psychopolitical, that it was first psychological, and that's why I put it in that order, right? It was first psychological, and that what was psychological became political, okay? Which kind of inverts the Marxist order of the world. Okay. So that's why I'm going through Lacan. Yeah, please.
And if I may add, not merely the Marxist historical materialism, I believe is what you're referring to here,
Mm-hmm.
which is that all things, in a way, can be broken down to their political economy if you're being a
Mm-hmm.
vulgar Marxist.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there is beyond this accurate point you make. there is another aspect of this, which is that in mainstream didactics, in the didactical approach to teaching political sciences, the social sciences, in the propedeutics, they will teach you, if they're good, if you're at a good place, they'll teach you that there are different levels of analytical vantage points. There is the macro political, the meso political, and then there's a micro political, micro, meso, macro. And at the micro level, there's a distinction to be made between studying the individuals as they relate to each other and studying the individuals within. So you have the inter as your paradigmatic focus, and you have the intra as the paradigmatic focus, two differing things, but of course with significant interaction. Um, you have the intra-micro, which is the domain of the psychology, and you have the inter-micro, which is the domain of sociology, and then you have the meso, which could be of anthropology, but certainly sociology, beginning political science, and then the macro, which is the domain of political science and geopolitics. And then you have those who do civilizational comparative studies or relational studies. Then you have the mega perspective lens. And I only say that to add to what you were saying, that Lacan actually does something that I haven't come across very often in the literature, which is he takes a step back and he says, you can you can see fruits of the psychological in the micro, in the meso, in the macro, and in the mega levels.
So
Right.
that's my method. Yeah.
So,
That's
and
why I'll talk about the individual and be as accurate as I am, and I'll talk
mm,
about the civilizational because
mm,
I built it upon that psychological or the psychic ordering
mm,
that will have to make its way through all of those layers, and so that you are going to see the same impossibilities, etc., repeated
mm.
across across the different layers.
I happen to be in possession of two terms that help pinpoint. I'm hesitant, but to help pinpoint at least is a central aspects of what we're dealing with in this conversation at this point, namely trans-level analytical vantage point as a part of the paradigm. Trans-level as in going up and down this ladder of analytical focal points, and transdisciplinary. It's absolutely impossible to navigate the levels without a transdisciplinary penchant or a transdisciplinary capability, which the university, which pretends to be teaching us universal concepts, actually doesn't do, because it breaks us down into departments and specific disciplines. And just to finalize this bubble of thought, is one thing I've learned from you, I'm learning from you with you, which my mentor also used to have, is refuse to be disciplined by a discipline.
Precisely. Because, and that was for me, because really, people would go, oh, your liberation is going to be over generations.
Mm.
And I'd look at them and I'd go, like, I literally swear. I say, like, F that shit, right? That's okay for you. I refuse to accept that, right?
That's a
And
footnote. That's worthy of a footnote, an important footnote. Maybe we can return to that. Do you
yeah,
know, most of my life I was really in this liberal mind state. Oh, so the world we want to have is not here, is not yet. I may not see it in my time because those that work for that world in the now get assassinated. Let me just educate instead of politicize. Because if you politicize and organize and are successful, you'll catch a bullet to your head for wanting to precipitate the future into the present. So the liberal, comfort and what's the word? Convenience rests on this idea of you can't do anything anyway. Just contribute your little part in your lifetime in the hopes of future emancipation.
And as you come to terms with Lacan, he explains why that happens as a psychic mechanism, right? And so
Tell
on.
us about that.
Right. No, I can't because we won't get the basics because we
Okay.
just got we just got to the symbolic, which I felt I did justice to, and we're now at the real, right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
so I'm
Yes.
saying the real is what cannot be symbolized, right? So there's one.
Why?
Why? You
Yes.
don't have words for it. You can't talk. You have, as we spoke the last time, you have your own experiences, which are so full that words cannot contain it. Right. So there's
Aren't
always
you
a bit
guys
of it.
making it too easy on yourselves? You're assuming that there is something out there that we cannot perceive, or what is the utility of
No, we're
such a
talking
thought?
about your experience. We're not talking about something out there.
Mm.
Okay. There's
Okay.
always in your experience. 'Cause Lacan is not metaphysical, right?
Good. 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 Good
He
point.
right. He really works against that. And
Mm.
and okay, that's so Lacanian. Okay. Um yeah. So it's so metaphysical. So Lacan is not metaphysical.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
He basically tries to abolish metaphysics from his thing. He's talking about the experience of human beings, and he is specifically in his clinic as a psychoanalyst working with people to make sense to make sense of their place in the world. Yeah.
I'm going to throw in an example here. Does that fit into this conversation? So, when you come to Germany, when you visit Germany for the first time in your life as an adult and you have to live here, you might get into trouble for a variety of reasons, but one in particular.
Hmm.
As you produce garbage, you have to separate the garbage depending on which Bundesland, in which country, in which state you are out of the 16. There are rules and laws of separating your garbage, triage. There's a yellow bag for specific types of synthetic materials, specific because not all of them go in the yellow bag. Then there is the blue container for paper. Then there's the brown or green for biodegradable things, and then you have to separate batteries as well. So you can't just put anything in
Yeah.
anything, and you have to do
Yeah.
that every bloody week of your life. And so here's the thing: is the Lacanian notion of the real,
Hmm.
does it already manifest in the life of the frustrated migrant, immigrant, who has to now integrate this symbolic differentiation of garbage into their symbolic order?
Well, because it is part of them being inscribed into the German symbolic order. Because
Yes.
part of being German, right, is you have to be able to
Mülltrennung.
negotiate that, right,
Mülltrennung is the word of it.
right. Yeah, and if you look at the way that the German language is,
Mhm.
right, it's very specific, right. Right. It's not surprising that happens, right, right. So
Mhm.
I remember being in the east of Germany and talking to um, an Arab linguist who was also a lawyer,
Mhm.
and he was talking about his experience of learning German
Okay.
and the different articles and the use of the different articles, and how difficult he found that. Okay,
Mhm.
and so you find with German speakers. that it influences the way that they see the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is also part of the symbolic order. Now I'm going to come back to the real.
Yes.
So, and I think we need to hold on this one to get through this one.
Mm-hmm.
So that there's a point in you, if you go to an experience which you have, okay, Yusuf was sharing with me a discussion by somebody called Imam Ghazali in the Islamic
Mm-hmm.
corpus, right? Who is who is more influential on the Islamic corpus than St. Thomas of Aquinas,
mm.
right? So Imam Ghazali says that you can, if you describe to the taste of honey to someone who has never tasted honey, right? They will never understand the taste of honey. It's impossible, right? They can know that there's something like honey, right? So, so it's sweet. But the specific type of sweetness of honey is very specific to honey.
Yes.
Okay? That
I
is the
think
real of honey.
specific even to the flowers or the nectar that the bees use.
Precisely. Precisely.
Mm.
Okay? And um, so then Imam Ghazali says that the taste of honey will be understood by somebody who has tasted honey, right? And this we have a word for this. We call it ishara, indication. Okay.
Mm.
Okay.
Experience. We've returned to the central concept in Lacanian work of experience.
Yes. And this because as a human being, you experience the world, and only some of your experiences are symbolizable.
Can
Okay.
experience be translated as ishara? Just for my notes.
No, no, no. Ishara
No.
is the indication. So ishara is the indication. So in the same way that you're indicating the taste of honey. So it's actually rather Caesarean before Saussure. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Because
Oh,
ishara is originally an Arabic word, which was adopted by other languages. Okay.
that's
Um,
beautiful.
yeah.
So what would be the Arabic be for experience?
The word that is used in Arabic for experience is though. Usually, that's one of the words I would say though, tasting, which is why Imam Ghazali went for honey, right? You see, so because of his symbolic order that he is part of, right? Um, because of the symbolic order that he's part of, it ordered the way that he spoke about this aspect of experience,
Yes.
right? And then there's a Quranic verse which shows which shows this. It goes uh, ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر.
Mm-hmm.
Corruption has appeared on the land and the sea. ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر بما كسبت أيدي الناس, because of what the hands of people have earned. ليذيقهم بعد الذي عملوا, so that they can taste some of what they have done, right?
Ooh.
So he didn't say all of what they have done, some of what they have done,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we
Mm-hmm.
say that this Bab is the presence of divine mercy, of Allah's mercy,
Mm-hmm.
that He doesn't expose you to all of it. He
Mm.
shields you from it, right? بعض الذي عملوا. So what do they have done? لعلكم يرجعون, so that they can correct themselves. راجعون is return. So the whole idea in that Quranic vocabulary or the Quranic, the symbolic order we can see from the Quran is that there is a fitrah, there is a more natural state of man in which he is more appropriate in what he does or what we do, right? Because in you see and you see, and do you see it? It's not nas. So in English, um, our word and Hindi, the word for man is manu, right? In Arabic, the word is not man; it is nas, it's people. Okay, yeah. So I'm trying to translate that, and I'm crossing between these symbolic positions, right, that have connotations for the way that you see people, right?
This is so essential and it touches
Yeah.
on so many other things. I feel like I'm interrupting you.
Yeah.
Please
So,
go ahead.
so there's the point at which the language, some things are unsymbolizable in language,
Absolutely.
right? But there's a point if you are in your experience and you are moving through from language to experience, there's a point at which that um, movement and the attempt to symbolize actually it almost like there's a point at which it annihilates you can't you can't think and you can't experience. It's like a void, right? It's like there's an Arabic word called harf, which means letter, right? But it also means the actually the point of the blade of the sword,
Repeat that
right?
again, please.
There's an Arabic word called harf, which means letter,
Hmm.
but it also means the point of the blade of the sword. And some of the commentators
Oh,
have said
oh,
that because because the letter splits the silence like a sword. Okay,
oh. Yes, I get it. Mm.
yeah.
My symbolic order affords me understanding of what you
So
say.
yeah, so it's really interesting to be able to move between languages, right?
Hmm.
In understanding Lacan,
Oh Lord,
because you
this
have to
is.
remember that Lacan was a creature moving between languages. He spoke French
Mm-hmm.
and German, at least,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And would have been have a because if you speak French, you have a functional understanding of Spanish and Italian.
I will definitely look into his biography,
Yeah.
because it was through looking at the biography of Fanon. There was a biography by Alice Cherki. I may have mentioned it several times on here.
Hmm.
That brought Lacan to my attention for the first
Yeah.
time in my life. So
Yeah.
I wonder what I'll discover when I look at Lacan from a biographical perspective. But
Yeah.
for the
But
moment,
yeah, but we're heading into these really difficult parts of the
mhm.
real, which I want to talk about,
Yes, please
which
go ahead.
I have to hold, right?
Yes, 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 yes,
So I'm
absolutely.
saying that the real is not only that. So sometimes when Lacan is talking about the real,
Hmm.
he's talking about that which is absolutely on a similar level into language, right? It's like you can't talk about it, right? It exceeds what we can talk about. But then he's also marks that there's a point at the cross between experience and language or symbolization at which there's almost a point of annihilation, right? So that is like it's like a hard limit to the real, right? It's a void. Yeah. And then there's what um there's what
Just a
and
question for comprehension, not for
let me
disruption
give
or distraction. Yeah.
one second.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, and then there is the raw chaos of experiencing the world, which we must organize symbolically to talk about. Right now, that he also talks about that raw chaos as real, um, and that's what I've understood of Lacan to this point. Di- I'm still digging through Lacan, right, to really grasp him. And I also will say that I'm digging through Lacan in English because his French is so dense. Okay, so so that got me to two registers, right? I've dealt with two registers. I've dealt with the symbolic and the real. Is that clear? You wanted to come
It's
in?
very, very clear, and it's throwing up more and more because now we've
Yeah.
reached the point where my brain is saying, "What is the overlap between Lacan and Levi Strauss?" But it's neither
No, no,
here
no,
nor
no.
there.
Don't do that. That's why Lacan makes it so difficult, because he wants you to meet his ideas on his terms.
I'm willing to do that, but I
Right.
mean, he doesn't exist outside of the symbolic order.
No, no, I get it. But what I'm saying is that you're going to see overlaps. But
Mm-hmm.
first, get Lacan. So
Mm-hmm.
go to Strauss not for overlap, but to eliminate what Lacan is talking about. Because what Lacan is trying to do is to shake you from the way that you would normally see the world. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Echi, I mean, I've got Echi here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
But let's assume that that is done because I feel thoroughly infected now
yeah,
by the
so I'm
Lacanian
saying
paradigm.
that when you go here,
Mm-hmm.
right,
Mm-hmm.
you have to go back from here to Strauss, to Kant, right, to Freud, to Klein. From Klein, I have to go to Winnicott. You understand?
Yes, because it's
So
linguistic.
it's yeah, because you have to. So basically, in order to get Lacan, what he forced you to do was to center him first, right? And that also has to do with Lacan's personality,
Mm-hmm.
but he is a
Biography.
psychoanalyst, so he's quite flamboyant, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he needed to be the center of attention, right? He's very like that. If you yeah, that's okay, right? What he tries to do is to to make his form appropriate,
Mm.
so ethically appropriate to what he's trying to do. Yeah.
I
So
see. Sorry.
so yeah. So from here, there's one register that we have. So we got the symbolic and the real up
Mm-hmm.
against each other, and then Lacan has another one he calls the imaginary.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody has any questions at this point before I go to the imaginary, I would appreciate it before I make the jump.
Should I read? Maybe. Let
Hmm.
me see. I hope it's not frozen. Should I read what I see?
Yeah. Okay.
So Ishara exists in Hindi, Urdu, and Arab, says the counterintuitive.
Hmm.
I have to let that sink in. Hindi, Urdu, and Arabic. That's
Yeah.
fascinating.
Hindi, Urdu, Arabic, Swahili.
I notice it doesn't say Farsi.
Um, well, Farsi has some Arabic words, but Farsi carries its own
Its
language.
own. Yes, yes.
Um, it carries its own you know, the when Imam Khomeini says Wilayatul Faqih, that's all Arabic, right? Those are all
Mm,
Arabic words, but in
mm.
and remember but yeah, Arabic. The You have to remember that much of, especially Muslim courtly culture in Middle Earth, I like to call it, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Um, was Persian.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because Persia has an ancient high culture, that that accommodates difference.
That's a very euphemistic way of saying they ran the place for a
No, no,
long
but they
time.
didn't only run the place, but they also really accommodated difference,
Mm. Yeah, but that's the
right?
only way to run such swaths of territory
Well,
and
well, well,
civilization.
well, no, because there were other major civilizations that did that, but they didn't. They weren't as accommodating of difference.
Yes.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So, um, that's why it is the Persians who rebuilt the Temple of Solomon, right, on behalf of the um, Jewish subjects.
Mm.
Yep. Okay. So, um, what's his name? Okay, Robert Romano comes. Just like honey, many tastes and feelings can only be fully understood by the one who experiences them. And so, Robert Romano, I would then ask if we understand a taste and a feeling, eh? And whether a taste and a feeling is a concept, right? On the nature of understanding and communication, how difficult it is can be to convey a personal experience to someone who hasn't shared it. Yeah.
Or who refuses to embrace it.
Yeah. So, and a classic of that is when I am talking to people about my experience of racism who are not, they're not, they don't have to experience it in the way that I do. And they want to mediate how I must talk about it,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
And not deal with it from where I am. So I entered Lacan to really, because I'd seen that so consistently. I had, there was a point at which I basically, I called my friend, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I'd spent, like, maybe some of them I spent 30 years with them, and we would meet and we stayed at each other's houses and all of that. And then I kept seeing the repeating of patterns, which, being that close, I realized they were just that I had been inscribed with them in ways that they were not willing to challenge in order to meet me.
Mm-hmm.
So I came to the conclusion is that when Lacan says that there are no sexual relations, no rapport, right? I realized that, okay, these were, so that we were having a relationship, but they wanted to meet me only in ways that were comfortable for them. They
Mm-hmm.
did not want to meet me in ways that were uncomfortable for them.
No.
So in order to do that, I had to be the one that had to sacrifice my comfort.
Yes.
And so I just called those relationships. I didn't care if they, where they were at one point. But
Mm-hmm.
I also, when I called those relationships, I also wanted to understand why that happened. Right? I didn't want to, I wasn't prepared to pathologize them. I wanted to understand what were the mechanisms. I
Mm.
wasn't prepared to endure it, but it wasn't because I thought that they were evil or bad.
Mm-hmm.
I just refused that kind of relationship anymore. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, yeah. So where are we now? Time. Okay.
We are with asking whether the
No,
tasting is.
I was just looking at time. So
Oh, okay.
now I have to go to the imaginary.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So in this experience of the world, some of which is symbolizable and some of which is not, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then the only thing that is going to suture
Mm.
this the experience of of this disparity
Mm-hmm.
is our fantasy. We have to imagine it as coherent. We've got to world it,
Mm.
right? And counterintuitive is saying, "By thank you for holding to this rather, my it feels like a very rambling
Oh, no,
exploration."
no. But
Yeah,
it's still very niche. I think
yeah.
I'm less worried about the rambling than about the nicheness of this conversation.
uh, Well, I'm not. I mean, if you've been following my work for this long,
Mm.
I
Mm.
really I think that I owe you this service
Mm.
of letting you know what I'm talking about,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
um, okay, and and okay, so this is we have a fantasy that allows our world to be whole, okay, and which at times collapses, okay, but is always in threat of collapse. So the more unstable it is the more we need fantasy, okay, but the instability is constitutive of human experience, right? There are going to be times when the coherence that you have breaks down. It doesn't, there are events which happen which break down that coherence. And through you either through fantasy hold hold on to the old, or again through fantasy reimagine it again. But
And
it's
this is.
necessary, right? So Lacan calls that the imaginary.
Mm.
Okay. Then another way of looking at this through the eyes of Lacan is that you in your symbolic order.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I have to say good morning to my mom.
Mm.
Yeah. Morning, mom. Yeah. Um, yeah. So through, because of the symbolic order, then when we build things in the world, right, we build based upon the symbolic order, but we build an imaginary, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
another thing that I find fascinating about the Lacanian imaginary,
Mm.
is that it's not just fantasy, but it is how we materialize fantasy.
That's an absolutely important thought. I never even thought about this. So Lacan does look at people's output.
Hmm.
Is there how much space does he? What
He's
importance
talking
does he?
about what people do. Yeah, and so he has a whole discussion on um on um on aggressivity
Mm.
through, and he uses the metaphor of French fortifications to look at the different patterns of aggressivity, right?
This is where we meet Fanon. This
Yeah,
is where we meet Fanon as a witness of France's brutalism on the Algerian people. This is where
yeah,
Fanon then says the body keeps score.
yes, yes. So that in Fanon you see real applications of the Lacanian frame, right?
Hmm.
If you want to understand Fanon, you have to really understand Lacan. You have to understand Freud and Lacan. Yeah,
And you have to understand his practice as a psychoanalyst in Algeria with victims of French brutalism, French torture, French the survivors, bereaved survivors of French intransigence on that territory
yeah,
and on
and you
those
have to
people.
also understand, and because also what Fanon is showing you is that the colonizer
Yeah.
cannot commit that brutality upon the Algerian, upon the colonized, without doing it to themselves. Okay, so what he's showing you, is that you are in a relationality that it affects both of you, and so for the Algerian, that the only way that they can have any kind of psychic closure and renewal is that they have to fight the French and they have to kick the French out of their heads, right? Or out of their spirits, right? Or out of their psyche. Yeah. Um, and and he's also making commentary on the symbolic order without mentioning it. Okay. So I think so now I've got Lacanian typology or topology, sorry. Is that so you've got the symbolic, the imaginary, and the real, and the imaginary is that thing or that process which sits between the symbolic and the real, or it is generated in order to bear the impossibility of that of our experience, which is the central impossibility is that our experience is not symbolizable. It is not completely symbolizable. There is always going to be a lack.
Yes,
Okay.
that's extremely important. The lack, the void, the monk.
Yeah, and so okay, hold on. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So so I'm here and I've got my hands together, right? I'm not
Mm-hmm.
praying. I'm dealing with something that I find difficult,
Mm-hmm.
which is that I'm looking at an image of myself, video image of myself, which is more coherent than my experience of myself. I don't see my face, I don't see my nose, I don't see my lips moving. Okay. And I've got my hands, and when I've got my hands and I'm trying to keep them based upon this image that I'm looking at the same level, I am having difficulty,
Mm.
right? This takes practice, right? Like if I was doing this, I'm doing this based upon, right? Old popping, right?
Mm-hmm.
Based
Mm-hmm.
upon my internal feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm trying to do it based upon looking into the camera. It's difficult, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But really, the image I have of myself is not based upon my experience, but based upon this mirror, right? Which seems more coherent than myself, but lacks the content of my experience. Yep.
This is important. Just quickly, is experience the real,
Um.
subjectively?
Okay. The moment I talk about my experience,
Mm-hmm.
I have to symbolize it. What I can't talk about is the real.
Oh.
Because Lacan is putting is this is not metaphysical. Lacan
No,
is putting your experience at the center,
let me throw back
right?
at
So
you what
hold on, you're asking me an essentialist question.
I might be. I might be. And I realize that. That's why I want to throw back at you what I said at the off camera at the beginning in the preparatory conversation. I thought I was being extra smart by saying fish know nothing of frying pans and herbe de Provence.
Mm-hmm.
And the British fish in particular, despite being British, knows nothing about chips
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and vinegar.
and vinegar. Is this essentializing beyond what Lacan applied to this culinary example would do?
Well, the thing about it is this image that I'm looking about at
Yes.
of of Alex in the
Mm-hmm.
video knows nothing of the content of Alex. Actually, it knows nothing. Yeah. Yeah.
I need a
Okay.
minute for this one. I do need a minute for this one because now I have to think about trying to stay within the paradigm. I'm trying to understand where within the symbolic order, language, of course, but the image is just a reflection in the mirror, in the camera.
Yeah. But the image is what makes us coherent, right? In
This
all,
is
and
just.
also when I was called Alex as a child
Hmm.
and I identified with Alex, that Alex doesn't hold my content. That is something that came outside of me, right? So then
Oh,
I hold an identity of myself. Oh, I'm Alex. Okay. Then I'm a boy, right? That mean these all mean things. These are all things which came from outside of me. Right? They're not based upon my experience. They allow me to map my experience to a wider um, world,
I believe I've
a
just understood.
coherence, right, in the world.
I believe I've just understood how masterful your little transition is with the image and the camera. Because I have here a sentence from my preparations for today, which says, in the domain of the imaginary, we have the illusion of individuation, the illusion of a notion of a coherent self. Searching for the self in the other, amongst other places, is something that we do. And you are just kind of with the image pointing out that there is a construction of the self, which in this camera image manifests as the illusion of what we perceive ourselves to be.
Yeah, and not only that, but we assume or we imagine the image to be more coherent than our experience, because our experience is chaotic. So you're asking about the real, that aspect of our experience is not symbolizable. Yeah.
Let me just throw in a comprehension point here. Um,
Okay.
this is just me trying to make sense
Mhm.
of what we're saying at this point. You know how it makes sense and it's obvious that as I'm looking at you, I'm also perceiving in a 180-degree
Mhm.
radius and perhaps even broader all manner of things happening around me. My attention just simply is geared at this camera and this interaction. Is the reason why the real may not be symbolizable in its totality, perhaps also rooted in the impossibility of computing all elements within our perception.
Well, there's the impossibility of complete knowing, right? From the perspective of human being,
I just was about to put in a footnote. Uh, Artificial superintelligence holds a promise, at least by the Altmans and co. and Nvidia and co. of
it's an
transcending that.
impossibility because the more information you have, it's an impossibility based upon the imagination that the more information that you have and you can synthesize, that eventually, right, you have enough to have a complete replication of the experience.
Oh,
It's
this
an
sentence.
impossibility,
Okay,
right?
it's an
But it's a
impossibility.
necessary, but it is necessary from the point of view of the imaginary. It's a necessary fantasy, right? Or I cannot imagine myself whole. So this image here, right, which I look at and I experience as me, okay, is in that sense, from the perspective of the symbolic, is more real than me. Okay, so if I'm turning from the experience, from the point of view of my experience,
Yes.
right, and I have to symbolize it,
Mm.
How am I going to describe it? I have to describe it from the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So always I am going to be looking to for more coherence, more completeness,
Mm-hmm.
right? To
Mm-hmm.
match my mirror, right? Which also has lack, right? And input and embeds lack in how I imagine my world, how I symbolize my world, and how my psychology is ordered. So structurally, so psychostructurally, lack is the thing that that forces me to orbit the lack in seeking to fulfill it, seeking to complete it. Okay?
Absolutely fascinating from the point of view of the human condition. If one were to work on such a thing as a theory of the human condition or an
Yeah.
idea, notion of the human condition,
Yeah.
this becomes a fascinating kind of
That's why I went into Lacan. That's why I couldn't once I got my teeth in Lacan, I couldn't stop. Okay. Okay. So sorry, Ifra Omar asked me, please define metaphysics.
mm,
Right? Meta, beyond,
mm,
physics, physical. Okay.
meta matter.
Yeah, yeah. So meta beyond. So if we're talking about beyond the physical, the questions which underlie the perception of the physical. Heidegger says that central question for this is why is there something rather than nothing? And then he shifts the frame to say, actually, the question should be why or how is there something? Right?
There it becomes ontological.
It becomes an ontological question. Why? Because we are in the existence of something and we posit the logical, because we are in language, we posit the logical opposite, which is nothing. Right? And so Heidegger is saying, well, something exists that we know. So let's deal with that. Let's start there. Right? So these are basically the theories of the physical. So what Lacan is doing is going, no, let's just look at the structure of experience. We are not here to answer metaphysical questions. Those are philosophical questions, right?
Including the hallucinations of
Yeah.
experience.
But then he can't completely do that. So what he tries to do is okay, I'm not allowing here in anything else but what is essential for my structure, right? So he has this very disciplined approach to metaphysics. He doesn't allow us to go into metaphysical questions. Okay. Um and um and and let's put it this way. I'm a Muslim, right? I pray, etc. I'm not asking questions
Mm,
about God or anything. That's not my interest. That's not those are not questions I have. I dealt with those questions a long time ago.
mm,
And so I'm I find I find Lacan really useful for an exploration of experience and how it structures our psychology.
mm.
Yeah.
Absolutely
And
fascinating.
in ways that don't allow us to escape
Mm-hmm.
into fantasy alone,
Mm-hmm.
but to recognize where the structural limits are.
Yes.
Yeah.
The
So
structural
sorry.
limits.
Billy Bumbo says, we see ourselves as others see us was my perspective for 48 years, which is why meditation is something I've done for the only past 4 years. It's so damn hard because now I'm required to see myself as I see you. Yeah. And then there's the point at which that constructed I collapses. Right? And at that point, you're then also faced with another ontological dilemma.
Spell it out, please.
Um, okay. Before I don't want to.
Mm.
That's for people who meditate.
Okay.
You'll come to the point where the 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 construction of the I
Mm.
begins to collapse. Just begins to collapse.
I asked the question because they are also in somewhat less introspective achievement terms, in terms of less introspective kind of heights, spiritual heights, a collapse of the self image, which I feel is central to the article on Dystopia Unmasked about Lenin, McCarthy, and Trump. A collapse of the self image, which reminds me of this term that some may be familiar with, of the broken mirror effect, is that one sees oneself either as complete in one's imaginary construction of oneself, or, as was said in the chat, through the perspective others have of us and project back to us. Feeling complete by the way, let us say, a lover will project their infatuation with us back to us. Might be another way of feeling complete or finding validation.
Okay.
Or,
So
or
go on. You're not finished.
um, where am I going with this? Is that this brings me back to a concept that I picked up in this podcast, in this Dystopia Unmasked Substack, the notion of the fractal identity.
Okay.
Namely that,
I need to intervene.
okay.
All right. I need to intervene
Hmm.
because you're going to make a jump that will embed misconnaissance. We call it, I
Hmm.
think.
Hmm.
Yeah. My French pronunciations are so bad. I'm not. Yeah. Méconnaissance. Can you say it for me, please?
Méconnaissance.
Méconnaissance. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Um, which is a misrecognition.
Yes.
Okay. The image is structurally incomplete. I know that. Inherently, I know that. Yeah. It doesn't reflect how I'm feeling.
Hmm.
I can't see how I'm feeling on the in the image. So
Hmm.
I know it's incomplete.
Yes.
Okay. But it's more coherent than I experience myself. So I looking at it, I imagine myself complete. Okay. So I'm suturing over the lack,
Mm.
but I know. So all I've done is disavowed the lack.
Through projection, among other things.
Yeah, because it's necessary. It's necessary to be in the world. This is not an error, right? Because it's not pathology. This is necessary to construct the world.
Mm.
Okay, and also in my experience, I also experience a lack. So from the point of view of the real, yeah, it's that there's also a lack in that there are aspects of my experience that are unsymbolizable. So, from the perspective of the symbolic, there's a hole. There's a point at which it can't go beyond. Sharp stop. And from the point of view of the real, there's a hole. Okay? So, this lack, this void, is constitutive of our experience of being in the world. Okay? So, somebody says this life cast is an outward image of Alex or a sign symbol of his inner experiences. This podcast is an image. of, okay, it is a recording, let's say it's a recording of an interaction between myself, meticulous prime, and an audience.
And
Okay.
the
And
exclusion, sorry.
hold on. And it does not capture your feelings, all of your ideas. I have not spoken all of my ideas. I've curated what I have to say, right? It doesn't capture that process. Okay. So inherent in it is lack. And we all know that. Okay. But in order to engage with it, we all imagine it not. Okay. And this paradox is one of the paradoxes, or the paradoxes. I'm going to use that, not paradigm. Okay. Yeah. One of the paradoxes of being in the world, right? Of the experience of being in the world, not being in the world, the experience of being in the world. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
this is quite, you're very absolutely right. This is a different paradigm that can live in its functionality, applicability, uh,
Okay.
independent of other paradigms competing at the same level about the same objects of
Yes.
inquiry.
Yes. And I think with Lacan, because his experience is a psychoanalytic experience,
Hmm.
that from which he is deriving this theory, and you have to take it on his terms,
Mm.
right?
You know, what you've generated, this conversation has generated a thought in me, which I find interesting. The notion of efficiency has been central and is central to the, well, I don't even, to the ethno-state, to the reappearance, reemergence of the European ethno-state. Mhm. And efficiency has been set up and drawn up and drummed up somehow to signify uh, something meliorative and antithetical to empathy, to compassion, to intercultural competence, or whatever one wants to call it, to cosmopolitanism.
Yeah, you jump. I would like to answer that,
But if
but
just
it,
allow,
it's it's too it's that I have to make too many jumps to
mm,
answer it. So I would like to leave it for another time.
oh, all right, because I would have just dropped the package. What I'm realizing is, and here would be the parceling of it, is that what has happened to this line of thought in this conversation is, look at how the imaginary construction of rationality begins discriminating notions and concepts the way it is proceeding. And it is
Hmm.
but the imaginary construction of rationality, which is an
Hmm.
illusion of notions of
Yeah,
efficiency as opposed to,
exactly, exactly, exactly. But also, what this conversation centers is the fact that that illusory aspect is constitutive of human experience.
yes.
It's not. It's not a malfunction.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what it means is that part of being in the world is that you have to confront your illusions.
Oh my God. Or you have to confront your illusions. And if you are an illusion salesman, you will be more successful if your intuition informs you about the adequacy of the illusory notions you infuse into the symbolic order.
Or that you recognize how this is structured.
Yeah.
And if you want to achieve what you want to achieve,
Hmm.
then you do it according to the structure.
fractal identity, coherence.
Yeah.
I may be too
Yeah.
in love with that, but I really feel it. I really feel it because
Yeah.
the more coherent your identity is with the symbolic order, the more success you may have. But if the symbolic order begins to crumble and change, as we are in a time of such change now, your loss of identification with the macro political order might lead to a suicide,
Yeah.
emptiness,
Yes.
vacuousness.
Yes. And I think we're going to get there, right? But I'm holding back. I have a framework for reading the political,
Yeah.
right? Which I call the type the topology of symbolic power as a framework.
I
Okay,
love
so
that.
and so I've had to really build that. I've built it. It's taken me 2 years really to really build it to some point of any kind of completion. And but it then allows us to understand well what opinions, what is thinkable and what is not, right? How our political is organized, but also how our identities are organized,
Hmm.
right? What are
Yes.
the master signifiers that pinion that identity,
The
right?
social points.
Well, the anchor points, the
Mm-hmm.
point de capiton. Do you know when the quilter is putting the button in on the quilt to keep
Yes.
the stuffing fixed, right? There's that
Mm-hmm.
um, that Lacan talks about. So these are the signifiers which pinion the discourse about our identities,
Mm-hmm.
about our polities, okay, and so on. And so that this is an important aspect of Lacan, which we haven't spoken about any of these,
Mm-hmm.
um, and and also how impossibilities become part of the shaping of our experience, right? So the impossibility is that any image or any mirror image, let's go use that word, if it has more information, then
Mm-hmm.
it will more adequately represent me. That's not true. There are certain aspects of what is me that are barred from the image. But the pursuit of that, right, is what creates um, the market for the for the phone with the camera that can give me the better image, right? Give me the better video because it's more, right? So it structures what we desire, right? The pursuit of the impossibility, right? The orbiting around the empty point,
Mm-hmm.
right? These are constitutive of experience,
Yes.
and they're not pathologies. They're not things you're going to correct,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's part of being human. Okay,
And
and for me, so I'm going back to a poem of that kind of deals with Islamic belief, and one of them is that is talks about that faqr, there's an inherent poverty in being human,
mm,
right? There are lacks in being human. Okay, um, and 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 so one has to work with the acceptance of that, right? So our pursuit of a kind of mastery, right, is an attempt to suture over those lacks, right? It is a desire to fulfill that lack.
mm-hmm.
But there's a point at which you realize that there is lack, but that you must be appropriate with the lack. So I can't use my lack as an excuse for something which I could do better,
Mm-hmm.
right? Etc. So basically, what it is that by accepting the way that our experience is structured, we can become more appropriate human beings. Okay?
Yes. Yes, 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 yes. It's fascinating. That would be the therapeutic path in his approach.
Yeah, but and in kind of my interpersonal or political approach in
Mm.
the recognition, the understanding of the impossibilities, etc., and also the acceptance of the imaginary, right? How I must imagine it, and working between that to be more ethically appropriate.
Nothing straight can be made of the crooked timber of man, comes to mind.
Yeah, but also those some of those. If so, I would empty it. I hear I'm emptying it of its moral content, right?
Mm.
Because I'm talking about the political, right? And so yeah, there is something about they are bends, but those are constitutive of man. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's
Okay.
absolutely fascinating.
I think I'm
Hard cut.
comfortable that I covered it. It's nearly 12. I think we've got 1 more minute to 12.
It's been very fruitful, very very insightful, and at many points, I mean, if I look at the notes I've taken, at many points, many further concepts and terms and notions and paradigms could have been touched on. But as you say, this is about Lacan, a conversation, trying to come to terms with his terms, with his
Mhm.
propositions. And I think this was a, if I may say so myself, a job sufficiently executed today. We'll have a part two, I'm assuming, if
Yeah.
that is all right, because there's more to Lacan than just these three registers,
Yeah.
and we'll get to touch on them. I wanted to say uh, that, among other things, when we were speaking of the image and the desire to construct an image that somehow mirrors, etc., I couldn't help but think of AI. I couldn't help but think of this ASI that they talk about, and I couldn't help but think of the promises and of our early conversations last year and this year about the hallucinations and the metonymic. There was a word that we used that you used to describe what this
Metonymic drift.
algorithm. Metonymic drift was one aspect. The other aspect was when you spoke of not a jester, but not a magician, but what is being done here is a bit of a, um, a sleight of hand, or what is it called?
Yeah, this is a conjurer's trick.
Thank you.
Yeah, the the algorithm does not know, right? It cannot know. It is an optimization function, right? So it puts the next word, literally the next word, based upon the statistical likelihood that it should be there.
It is the
Uh,
human being
Hello, my
submitting them.
Demotel.
It is the human being submitting themselves to an automatized symbolic order.
Well, uh, I would say that the the AI data set
Yes,
reflects our symbolic order,
exactly. And we've
and
automatized it.
okay, and it embeds its relationality
Hmm.
within matrices, mathematical matrices,
Yes, 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 yes,
and
yes.
so it can then, because the data sets are large enough, it can that that relationality is embedded in the representation of the data set.
Hmm.
So the way that AI works is that it comes here, so it lands on the word,
Mm-hmm.
um, um, cow, and by by the relationships and the distance of the other words from it
Mm-hmm.
in the matrices,
Mm-hmm.
it can work out the context of cow,
Mm.
right? Because you've used certain types of words. It
Yes.
then matching that, it works out the context of cow, right? Statistically works out the context of cow as a mathematical relation, and then it must then, in its reply, choose the next word,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it
Yes.
has all of these matrices that have all of these, right? So when you're tuning the engine, the optimization engine, I'm going algorithm, right? You have to get that percentage right, or on either side you get gobbledygook,
Mm-hmm.
right? Two, if you want to to optimize the, so there's a sweet spot, right,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
at which it produces human-like coherence. Okay, and so it does not know. It is not intelligent. It's already embedded our intelligence in the data set.
To the
Okay.
point where we had evolved it.
Well, I don't.
It-
I wouldn't even use the language of things like evolved. No, it that those are things that we are imposing upon it. Right. It
mhm.
is it is a record of how we are, how we think. Right, from a vast, right, and embedding it in a mathematical form that also embeds meaning relationships.
You know, I was an AI skeptic to a certain point, rather on this more on the skeptical side for a variety of reasons, including ecological reasons.
Okay.
But this conversation today somehow it is uh, increasing the sentiment that I have, and I'd like to stick a quote on it by Goethe: "The spirits that I summoned have now left me in the lurch," or to put it differently, I can no longer get rid of them. And that is in Goethe's the
Go.
pardon me,
No, no, go on.
the Zauberlehrling. The
Silberling.
spirits that I've summoned, I can no longer get rid of them. They have left me in a lurch. And I feel like, in light of this conversation, I find it very strange to enable the symbolic order that has been produced by us to become digital.
No, it doesn't enable it.
But we
That's
have enabled it.
metaphysical.
No, but we have enabled these computers to become automatons with
No,
our.
no, it doesn't make the computer automaton. It doesn't make the computer an automaton. That's the point, right? The computer, what we have done is built an engine that can, by statistical by statistical function, is able to mirror back to us answers that based upon our questions.
Why?
Why? Based upon right. So the machine doesn't feel, if it has any kind of pulsion, its pulsion is optimization. That is it.
But that's not where I'm going. I
Hmm.
agree with you. What I am concerned with is, for example, what's his name, Mr. Eck, the owner founder of Spotify, collecting the 600 to 700 million EU euros and
Hmm.
investing them into a German company, Helsing, that
Hmm.
is producing ostensibly autonomous warfare drones, allegedly for the protection of Europe against Russia. The point about it is autonomous drones. The autonomy aspect of it is
Okay.
quite disturbing
But
to me.
okay, so when we're talking about autonomous drones,
Yes.
okay, we are talking about a drone that has a weapon
Mm-hmm.
that can deploy that weapon, it can fire the weapon, okay, based upon um, based upon its data set and its instruction set. That is not autonomous. That is bounded, right? So there are certain, right? What it is that we want to kill based upon a rule set, and we imagine, and it is necessary to to imagine some impossibilities, right? One is the impossibility of complete security.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yeah, it's a lot. It's sorry, it's a lot for one video. I want to
It's a
stop.
lot. It's a lot. It's a lot.
It's a
It's a
lot for
lot.
one
It's a
video.
lot.
I want
It's
to
a lot.
stop. It's
It's a
yeah.
lot.
I in this in this video, we really got to what are these the Lacanian registers
Allow
of
us to do.
the symbolic, the imaginary, and the real, right?
You've gone from Lacan to Spotify.
Yeah, and this proves why I chose um,
Mm.
this route, because I feel that it explores the psychic underpin of power.
Mm.
So I'm trying to do with Lacan what Foucault did with the discourse of power.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Alex,
Okay,
it's been a
guys.
pleasure. To everyone, I see that there's 16 people who did not abandon us.
Yeah. I'm absolute respect for you for holding through what I think would have seemed at times a fairly obtuse discussion. Right.
Uh, Very thought provoking is who says that? Hafsat, hello, Hafsat. And Robert Romano says, understanding the topology of the symbolic order allows individuals to grasp how societal norms and structures shape personal identities and desires. It provides insights into psychological phenomena such as neurosis, where conflict between the symbolic, the real, and the imaginary aspects of experience manifests. That's where the Freudian touch still echoes in that
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
uh,
Um, and and and
tripartite.
and and okay, I use Lacan to read the political.
Yes,
Right, that's what I use Lacan to read the political, and to do so, yeah, you have to really stick to certain types of disciplines,
yes,
right? And one of the things you
absolutely.
have to recognize is that neurosis is necessary. Yeah.
Oh, yes, yes,
It,
yes,
it's
yes.
it's it is neurosis is constitutive, right? So
That's it.
it's part of what constitutes a polity, that there's going to be neuroses,
Mm-hmm.
that there's going to be constitutive psychoses within a polity,
Yes.
right? Um, and and so I also went here because I needed to get beyond the closure which ideology offered.
Oh my God, Alex. Boom. Another thing just went. We have to stop because this is endless. I just realized there is a fundamental lack in the human condition at the biological level. Sleep, thirst, hunger. These are lacks that repeat themselves. They're constitutive of the human condition,
Yes, yes.
and so on
That's
and so
why I
forth.
use the that, and I was going through in my head I was going through the poem,
Mm,
which is the ground of Islamic belief,
mm,
right? And so that's why I went to that one. Is that yes, lack is constitutive of the human being,
absolutely.
right? And that is what drives desires.
Oh my God.
If you're
When
not
thought,
hungry, right,
mm,
and Lacan identifies it as a need. If you're not hungry, then you don't need to eat food.
but it will
Yeah,
return. It will
yeah,
return.
If you're not tired, but and it returns, right? So he makes a difference between desires and needs.
Mm.
That's important. I don't want to go there. All right, we're done. Okay, I'm
Thank
gonna
you so
go.
much.
The only way it's gonna work is I have to go. All right.
It's a hard cut. Thank you so
All
much,
right.
Alex. This was very instructive. And talk to everybody soon. Visit the archive of dystopia
Yeah.
in Substack. Just go through the archives. A lot of what was discussed today conceptually has been spoken about politically. Thank you.
So if you read through those archives, you're gonna see where those ideas have shaped them, and you'll get other on meanings that from that maybe you didn't get on the first reading. All right.
Bye.
Okay.